Milling Through History presents The Ride Often Forgotten. The name Jack Jouett does not necessarily ring bells into many people's ears. In fact, even the most ardent hit student of American Revolutionary history might have a hard time knowing who this person was. And yet, his name and legacy is one that ought to be remembered. He was born on December the 7th, 1754. Son of a tavern keeper, Jouett himself is a rather interesting fellow, as he is described as being 6 feet 4 inches in height and weighing in at 220 pounds. It is undeniable that he struck a rather striking feature. During the Revolutionary War itself, he became a captain in the 16th Regiment of the Virginia Militia, and was one of the signers of the Albemarle Declaration, which would renounce the monarchy of George III during the American Revolution itself. And yet, while he played this small role and might have been relegated simply to county history, his fame would occur on June the 3rd, 1781. 2 days prior, on June the 1st, General Cornwallis learned that Thomas Jefferson and many members of the Virginia legislature had retreated away from Richmond and gone to Charlottesville, and very much specifically to Monticello. Seeing an opportunity to capture a whole group of rebel governing officials, Cornwallis would order Colonel Banastre Tarleton to capture these politicians and also destroy supplies that the Americans had gathered to help General Lafayette, who was on his way from Baltimore, Maryland. On the night of June 3rd, Jouett heard and saw Tarleton's cavalry passing by where he was sleeping in Louisa County. Suspecting they were on their way to Charlottesville, Jouett knew that Jefferson was nearby, most likely at his own home, and, getting onto his horse, rode 40 miles through the dark in order to get to Monticello before the British could get there themselves. When he arrived, he notified Jefferson of the impending arrival of the British cavalry. Jefferson thanked his would-be savior and then slowly began to make preparations for evacuation. Jouett, however, was not done with his ride, as he would then proceed to go from Monticello to Charlottesville, and, arriving at Swan Tavern, warned the legislature of the impending arrival of the British cavalry. Almost immediately, the legislature began to make their evacuation to Stanton. However, while most were able to get away, 7 members were captured. It is believed that Tarleton may have been delayed for approximately 30 minutes at the home of Dr. Thomas Walker, who, according to legend, had offered an extravagant breakfast to Tarleton and his men. This claim, however, is disputed by Tarleton, who he himself had written in his own diary he had only spent about 30 minutes at the plantation home. Either way, though, those brief few minutes were able to allow Jefferson to just barely have enough time to escape. Jefferson, who had been taking his time in the evacuation of Monticello, would consistently check his telescope and would wait until the British had almost arrived at his front doorstep before getting away. As for the Virginia legislature, they would successfully meet in Stanton, Virginia, and elected Thomas Nelson as the next governor of the state. Ironically, even though Jefferson was the governor at the time of Cornwallis learning where he was, his term had expired on June the 2nd, thus making his value as governor of Virginia almost null and void, but certainly his value as the author and signee of the Declaration of Independence still very high. On June 15, 1781, the state legislature would pass a resolution to honor Jouett for his actions. However, it would be years before Jouett would ever receive his prize. After the war, Jouett would move into the area of Virginia that would soon become Kentucky and served in the Virginia House of Delegates for the frontier counties of the state. When Kentucky applied for statehood, Jouett was a great supporter of this cause and, after Kentucky was made a state, became part of the initial Kentucky state legislature. Eventually, however, he would move to Bath County, Kentucky, and remain living there with his daughter and her family for the rest of his life. He would pass away on March the 1st, 1822, and was buried in the cemetery with other Revolutionary War soldiers. Now be sure to click like, share, and subscribe for future episodes of Milling Through History. And be sure to leave comments below for future episode ideas. Be sure to take a look at our suggested reading page.